My name is Luke Turner, and I'm 40 years old. At the time my life took an unexpected turn, I had been married for nearly a decade. For as long as I can remember, I've had a deep passion for tinkering, disassembling gadgets just to reimagine them in new, innovative ways. What began as a casual hobby gradually caught the attention of others, and eventually, I started to gain recognition for the devices I created. Over time, this led to me securing several patents. Not long ago, I decided to sell those patents, which brought in a substantial sum. Because my personal life was quite turbulent at that moment, I opted to deposit the money into a trust fund. I needed time to reflect and bring some stability back into my world before deciding how best to use the funds. At 22, I had just wrapped up 3 years in the Army. My role was in repairing medical equipment, which sparked a real interest in machinery and tech. Upon returning to civilian life, I took a job repairing equipment for a major wholesale bakery. It wasn't glamorous, but it allowed me to sharpen my technical skills. Meanwhile, I enrolled in evening college courses to pursue a degree in electrical engineering. Life was a balancing act, my days filled with work, my nights with studies, and my spare moments often spent navigating the world of dating. I reconnected with some women from my high school years and met new people, all while trying to figure out what I wanted both personally and professionally. Despite the hectic pace, I was hopeful and motivated about my future. One Friday evening, I found myself at a neighborhood lounge, quietly sipping a beer while taking in the lively atmosphere around me. The place buzzed with chatter and laughter, and as I scanned the room, I spotted someone familiar, Nora Hayes, a colleague from work. She was settled into a booth made for four, engaged in conversation with 2 other women. The bar was packed, with people milling about and hoping for a seat. Not wanting to just stand around, I made my way to her table and gave her a friendly greeting, asking if I could join them. After a quick check-in with her friends, they all gave a nod of approval, and I slid into the booth. I introduced myself, and Nora took it upon herself to make the proper introductions. Her friends were Emma Foster and Sophia Bennett. Emma immediately stood out. She spoke with ease and had a spark that drew me in. There was a quiet charm about her that was hard to ignore. Sophia, by contrast, gave off a different vibe. It's not that she was unpleasant, she was polite and certainly never said anything wrong, but there was an undeniable distance. Something in her manner just didn't sit right with me. We weren't on the same wavelength, and I could feel it. Emma shifted slightly, allowing me to sit beside her. Across from us, Nora and I launched into a light-hearted catch-up, talking about the parts of our lives that didn't revolve around our jobs. I tried including Sophia in the conversation, but it was like we were speaking 2 entirely different dialects. Our efforts just didn't connect. Emma, sitting quietly beside me, seemed to pick up on this disconnect. As my attempts fizzled, she abruptly got up, mentioning that she needed a restroom break. I moved so she could slide out, and, as often happens, the other women joined her. I was left alone in the booth, watching over their purses like some trusted stand-in. After what seemed like a lengthy intermission, they returned. Nora appeared first, scooping up her handbag and Sophia's. She leaned in and explained in a hushed, apologetic tone that Sophia wasn't feeling well and needed to head home. Without much fanfare, she guided Sophia out of the lounge, leaving just Emma and me at the table. The sudden departure left a brief awkward pause. I turned to Emma and asked if she wanted to call it a night or if she preferred that I take my leave. She declined and then expressed her gratitude for my efforts to talk with Sophia. Apparently, Sophia had recently discovered her fiancé had been unfaithful with an ex-girlfriend, and as a result, she wasn't exactly thrilled with the male population at the moment. That revelation set the tone for the rest of the evening. Emma and I fell into an easy rhythm, chatting as if the crowded lounge had vanished around us. We shared beer and pizza, and by the time the night was winding down, I managed to convince her to give me her phone number, promising to follow up. As we exited the lounge, I offered her a ride home, but she politely declined. She had driven herself there and hadn't come with Nora. True to my word, I called Emma the following day, and we arranged to meet again the next weekend. Our date was to see a play put on by a local theater group. It was Emma's first time experiencing live theater, and she was instantly captivated. Afterward, we grabbed a late dinner, and the night ended on a high note. One date led to another, and within a few weeks, we found ourselves dating exclusively, just as I was approaching the finish line on my degree. I landed a position with a local electrical contracting firm, working as an assistant engineer. Not long after, I proposed to her, and she agreed. A year and a half later, we tied the knot. Sophia stood by her side as the maid of honor, while Nora filled the role of bridesmaid. The wedding turned out beautifully, and the celebration that followed was filled with laughter and joy. As I've mentioned before, I've always been someone who enjoyed tinkering, a habit that started back in high school. Over the years, I'd managed to patent several designs for bakery and commercial kitchen equipment that caught the industry's attention. While continuing my job in construction as an electrical engineer, I also launched a company to handle these inventions. All the income generated was funneled into a dedicated business account, something that felt like my own private achievement. Quietly and without revealing it to anyone, I used that company to buy the house we were renting at the time. For nearly 2 years, life was moving along smoothly. I earned a promotion to lead engineer on a major development project, and Emma found a new position at a nearby office. With our finances finally in order, she began talking about starting a family. We did everything we could to make that dream come true, but nothing seemed to work. After 3 long years, we decided to consult a fertility specialist. The results were hard to digest. Due to an old injury I had sustained during my military service, my sperm count was incredibly low, and the few sperm that were present were not motile. Emma was devastated, and almost instantly, our intimate life disappeared as if someone had flicked off a light switch. I tried to be patient and understanding, but after about 6 months of distance and silence, I couldn't bear it anymore. One evening, I sat down with her and gently said, "Emma, I've decided to move out. It feels like you no longer want any intimacy between us, and I can't be blamed for something that I had no control over. If having children means more to you than the life we've built together, then maybe we should consider separating." Emma burst into tears. "I don't want to lose you. I don't want a divorce. I've just been so heartbroken that we won't have children. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of what truly matters. You're my life partner. Please, don't leave. I will make an effort." But I shook my head. "Effort isn't what I need right now. I don't want you to try. I need you to want to make things better. I'm not disappearing forever. If you need me, I'll be there. But I truly believe we should consider couples counseling. And if you're not open to that, then I think you should talk to someone alone." I continued, "Emma, you mean the world to me. I've always wanted to build a family with you. When I learned I couldn't have kids, it broke me, but seeing how much it's hurting you is even worse. If adopting makes you happy, I'm ready. We can look into medical options too. But right now, I can't keep living in a space where I feel invisible. When I try to hold you, you shrink back like I'm a stranger or worse. It's been a long time since you simply smiled at me or kissed me just because. I love you with every part of me. This isn't about the lack of intimacy, it's about how your pain is tearing me apart." When I finally stopped speaking, there was a heavy silence. After a pause, Emma quietly asked, "Where are you going to stay? What will you do? When will you come back? How will you know when I've changed? Please don't go." I responded gently, "I'll be nearby. I'll keep working. I'm not abandoning you. I still love you deeply, but I have to step away for now. The pain we're both in, it's starting to turn into anger, and I'm scared of what that might become. My mom has offered me the apartment above her garage. Your parents have also offered me a place in their building. I'll be close. Just, please, get some help. I can't keep doing this when it's hurting us both so badly. I'll come back when I feel that you want me near you again, when I can touch you without feeling like I'm causing you more pain." She lowered her head and started to cry. Then, suddenly, she snapped, "Go crawl into your cave. Just leave when things get hard." "Fine. I'll get a lawyer before I ever see a shrink. Just get out." Her outburst stunned me. This was the same woman who once wouldn't even say something mildly crass. Without a word, I stood up, walked into our bedroom, and began packing. My eyes welled up as I folded clothes and boxed up a few things. I filled my car and hitched up our small camping trailer. It wasn't even a quarter full because I hoped I wouldn't be gone too long. I drove the 20 minutes to my mother's house and started unpacking. About 2 hours later, she came upstairs and told me that Emma was on the phone. I asked her to either take a message or tell Emma to call my cell. After that final blow-up, I couldn't handle another wave of anger right away. I turned to my mom and said, "I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this. I love Emma so much, but it feels like I'm always fighting just to get a simple kiss. I know you might not want to hear this, but ever since we learned I'm sterile, there's been no intimacy at all. I understand how much Emma wants children, and I even offered her a divorce if it would help her move on. But right now, I'm just lost. I don't know what else to do. I'm holding on to the hope that my decision to move out might jolt her into acknowledging her own pain. If it doesn't work, I might be stuck in this situation for much longer." That night, I wished my mom good night, and headed to bed at my workplace. The following morning, two detectives arrived at the construction site where I worked. They wanted a word with me about a break-in at my home that had occurred the night before. I was caught off guard. They explained that around 3 o'clock in the morning, someone had attempted to force open a window leading to the basement. My wife had alerted the police, and the suspect fled when they heard the sirens approaching. The officers then asked me if I had any idea why someone might target our house. I shared that I had a number of innovative devices at home, including some I was still developing. I also mentioned that I had moved out for the time being, but I would return that evening to check on things. Then came the shocking news. One of the detectives told me that my wife had been taken to the hospital. She had suffered what appeared to be a psychotic episode. Although she wasn't in immediate danger, the officer who had responded to the scene said she was in a state of extreme distress. She was now being treated at the psychiatric unit in City Hospital. Apparently, she had told the man who was with her at the time to leave the house. I didn't hesitate. I told them not to worry about my inventions. Nothing was more important than her well-being. I thanked them and all the officers who had been involved, promising to do whatever it took to make things right. Oddly, the mention of another man in the house didn't hit me until the following day. When I reached the hospital, I was informed that I wasn't allowed to see Emma. Confused, I asked who had created that list of restricted visitors. They explained that both Emma and the doctors had added names, and she had personally chosen to exclude me. That realization stung. At that moment, I knew I had reached my limit. I returned to the apartment, brooding for about an hour before deciding to take action. I started by calling the hospital to speak with her doctor. He returned my call quickly, only to inform me that I wasn't permitted to receive any medical information either. Frustrated, I contacted Emma's parents to explain the situation. They didn't support her decision to cut me off and assured me they would keep me informed. I went over everything that had happened in recent days, also mentioning that her behavior had confirmed my decision to move out was justified. After ending the call, I reached out to my mother. Since she had worked as a paralegal before retiring, I asked her to recommend the toughest divorce attorney she knew. I told her that Emma had completely shut me out of her life, and maybe this separation would push her toward the help she needed. I also suggested that if we did divorce, she might finally have the children she seemed to be so fixated on. Reluctantly, my mother gave me the name of Ryan Blackwood. I thanked her and let her go about her day. Next, I called the police to request a copy of the incident report for insurance purposes. They informed me that the report would be ready in 30 minutes, but I had to pick it up in person due to legal restrictions. When I got the report, several things immediately seemed off. The window that had been tampered with was tiny, only 6 inches high and 24 inches wide. No adult could possibly fit through that. Moreover, the footprints found near the window were small, likely from a child or a petite woman. But what stood out the most was that Emma wasn't alone in the house during the incident. A man named Samuel Carter had also been present at 3 o'clock in the morning. Both of them were reportedly wearing robes. The name Samuel Carter rang a bell, but I couldn't place it at first. The report stated that neither of them saw the intruder, but it did mention Emma's agitation at the possibility of their names being documented together in an official police report. Suddenly, the pieces started to click. I called Emma's workplace, and a man answered the phone. His name was Samuel. I quickly hung up, pretending it was a wrong number. That's when it all came back to me. Samuel Carter was a sales associate at Emma's office. I'd met him once when she first got the job. And if I remembered correctly, his wife was actually the owner of the company. What was he doing in my house at that hour? The following day, I called Ryan Blackwood and was caught off guard to discover that Ryan was a woman. I scheduled an appointment for later that day. Then I contacted my job, letting them know that my assistant could cover for me while I took the rest of the week off as personal time. My boss didn't take it well and demanded that I return immediately. In response, I faxed over my resignation within 15 minutes. Afterward, he called back to apologize and offered me the time off, but I had already made up my mind. I sent in a second resignation, this one final. I didn't hear from work again. When I arrived at Ryan's office, I asked her to begin the process for filing a divorce and also initiate a lawsuit against the office where Emma and Samuel were employed. I brought up the possibility of eviction as well, since the house was technically owned by my company and Emma had no legal claim to it. We were simply renting it from the business I had founded to manage and market my inventions. I explained to Ryan that I had filed a police report confirming that Emma had invited another man into our home at around 3 o'clock in the morning. I also told him that I had left temporarily due to some unresolved issues between us, and that the man showed up on the same night I moved out. Ryan responded that, since Emma was under a mandatory 14-day psychiatric hold and her treatment was being covered by my insurance, she would need to lift the medical confidentiality clause or I would halt payment. She also strongly suggested that I return to the house immediately, cancel all joint credit cards, and contact our bank to impose withdrawal limits on shared accounts. Additionally, I was advised to cancel any joint ATM cards. Once I completed all the necessary actions at the bank, I headed back to the house, only to find Samuel trying to get in. I parked in the driveway, blocking his vehicle, and as soon as I did, he began approaching me. I quickly grabbed my phone and called the police's non-emergency line to request an officer. Samuel walked up to my car and gestured for me to lower the window. I shook my head, held up my wallet to show him my ID through the glass, and that's when he bolted down the street. I couldn't help but laugh, and when the officer came on the line, I asked if there was any update on the damage from the recent break-in. The police told me that the only damage was a broken window caused by a neighbor who was heavily intoxicated. Apparently, she had stumbled into our driveway, and when her key didn't fit, she kicked the window in frustration. Once it shattered, she fled the scene. She later called the police station and offered to pay for the damages. Inside the house, I went into our former bedroom and saw that the drawers I had emptied were now filled with men's clothing. I searched the entire bedroom and closet, collecting all the men's clothes that didn't belong to me. I carried them to the garage, where we had an old and very much illegal incinerator. Leaving the garage door open in case Samuel returned, I began burning the clothing. Sure enough, he showed up just as I was tossing in the last batch. I smiled and greeted him, asking if he needed anything. When he noticed what I was doing, he gave a slight shake of his head and stepped inside. He told me I probably had every right to do what I was doing. According to him, Emma had claimed she was divorced and had been telling him I left her for another woman 6 months earlier. Based on that, he felt it was fine to move in. He said Emma never paid any rent, the lease was in his name, and she had no legal claim to the property. He had only moved out 3 days ago because of some issues with his wife, which he insisted were temporary. I then warned him that he and his wife's business would be hearing from my attorney shortly. His face lost all color, and I chuckled, asking if he wanted me to move my car so he could leave. Before he walked out, I added that when he saw Emma, he should let her know that once she was discharged, she needed to go straight to her parents' home. That's where all of her belongings would be waiting. I also told him that I now understood what had caused the freeze in his marriage. Just as he turned to go, I shouted one last question, demanding to know how long he had been involved with my wife. He didn't say a word, just got into his car, and I moved mine to let him leave. Afterward, I called a locksmith and spent the afternoon making multiple copies of the police report. I kept one for my insurance provider, another for Emma's parents in case they tried to hold me responsible, and placed a third in our basement safe. The original I planned to lock away in my personal safe deposit box at the bank. That box also held all my patent documentation and a bank book recording the earnings from my licensing agreements. Only my salary and about 10% of my patent income were in our joint accounts, just enough so Emma would be fairly compensated if we split up. The rest of the funds were hidden away as something exclusively mine, something Emma couldn't access even if she tried to claim it in a divorce. Even the house was no longer a secret, but I didn't think it would become a major issue. The following morning, I packed up all of Emma's clothes, makeup, toiletries, and personal photos that didn't include me. I used the same boxes we had flattened and stored when she first moved in. By early afternoon, the locksmith arrived and changed all the locks. I took the packed boxes to her parents' apartment and handed them a copy of the police report. Though they were clearly unhappy with the situation, they accepted her belongings without further protest, and I left. Later, Ryan contacted me with an update. The threat of halting payment had successfully pressured them into releasing Emma's medical records. It turned out she was approximately 6 weeks pregnant and had panicked when she realized the police were going to uncover that Mr. Carter had been at the house that night. She completely lost control, screaming at the officers who had shown up to investigate the break-in. Her outburst turned into hysteria, and she ended up being restrained and committed for a 14-day psychiatric evaluation. Tragically, she lost the baby, which pushed her mental state into a further decline. The doctors now believed she was bordering on suicidal and were considering placing her in a 90-day psychiatric hold. The doctors also observed unusual hormonal levels in Emma, resembling those typically seen in someone taking fertility medication. However, there were no prescriptions on record from any physicians she claimed were treating her. The discovery of her pregnancy became the tipping point. I informed Ryan that I wanted Emma to be served with legal documents as soon as she was discharged from the hospital. I revealed to Ryan that my fertility was severely compromised, almost non-existent, and that what little sperm I had were not viable. I also instructed her to promptly file a lawsuit against the company, citing their strict policy against workplace relationships. I told Ryan to make the legal battle tough and demanding, though not destructive. A key element of the settlement would require both Emma and Samuel to be terminated with prejudice, stripped of any recommendations or severance benefits. Ryan wasted no time. She filed the lawsuit immediately. Mrs. Carter, through her legal representative, informed Ryan that they would contest the claims. Ryan, in response, pointed to substantial evidence of inappropriate behavior from both Samuel and Emma. Although she chose not to mention the pregnancy, she did bring up a police report confirming Samuel's presence at our house at 3 o'clock in the morning. The opposing attorney appeared surprised and admitted that his client hadn't disclosed that detail. Ryan suggested that perhaps Emma herself wasn't aware of what had been reported. At the mere mention of Emma's name, the lawyer acknowledged the severity of the situation and said he would advise a settlement. When the legal teams reconvened, they quickly reached an agreement. I received a fair settlement, and both Emma and Samuel lost their jobs. Samuel's wife, upon learning about the police report, filed for divorce. Samuel had lied, claiming he was at a client's office that night preparing for an early start. An employee who worked closely with Emma shared these updates with me. Emma left the hospital before she could be officially committed, and she was served legal documents right outside on the hospital sidewalk. After that, she vanished. I didn't hear from her for more than a year. Eventually, she signed and returned the divorce papers, asking for absolutely nothing, not even the shares she was legally entitled to. Several months after our divorce was finalized, I received a handwritten letter from her. It was postmarked from a small, remote town in Montana. Emma didn't reveal anything about her current life. The letter simply offered a heartfelt apology for the suffering she had caused me. Interestingly, the day after Emma's apology arrived, Samuel had an unfortunate incident involving a baseball. It turns out he had been involved with the wife of someone influential while he was in New York. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for him. Dear listeners, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments section, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.